Your doctor said you're cleared, but why does your knee still not feel right? If that's a question you've ever asked yourself, stay with me. Because what I'm about to share with you is a thing nobody explained after you got the clearance. Before we dive into that, this episode is brought to you by the Starter System. And if you're a player looking for a complete structure, a workbook, movement screens, progression, frameworks, and a one-on-one call with me to map out exactly what you need to focus on, that's the Starter System. It's built specifically for basketball players who are done guessing and ready to get back to dominating. Link in the show notes. All right. So if you ever ask yourself, my doctor said I'm clear, why do I still not feel right? That is a normal thing to experience. It happens way too often, and it's something that is unfortunately way too common. The doc will is usually going off a timeline and what you are telling them. If you say you've been going to rehab and you feel good, you've been doing everything your rehab provider tells you to do, and they'll look at your range of motion, they'll look at have you kick into their arm or hand or whatever body part and kick into it and tell you you're good. They might do some special tests to test how stable your ligaments are and use all that to say you are good to go to sport. And while intentions are probably well, it's doing athletes like you a disservice because that's not what a game is going to be like. It's not going to be what is required of you when you step out into the court. Stepping, kicking to somebody's hand is nowhere close to the amount of accelerations and decelerations you're going to encounter in the course of a 32, 40 minute, 48 minute, or your regular pickup game. Yeah, there's nowhere close. And our field as a whole has a lot to do to get better to make sure that we're getting kids and athletes back safely, number one, two, confidently, and three, decreasing their chance of the same injury happening again. So we got a lot of work to do, but that's why we're gonna dive into this subject today, because something that I'm seeing way too much of, and it's something that I think with the stories that we're gonna share that I think can help an athlete if they're going through this and they're going through medical clearance. There's a lot that goes into it. So let me share a story with you guys real quick. I work with an athlete who was in high school at the time, and he was on a pretty loaded basketball team, and they were making a run for the state championship. They ended up having a pretty big dynasty in the state, but he was on the team and he was trying to contribute and make an impact and knew that they had a solid squad. But he unfortunately tore his ACL playing the game. So he lost that season. This is his junior year. So he's using his summer of his senior year to rehab. He goes through surgery. Told it goes well. Going through rehab, doing all the things necessary to make sure he can come back for his senior year and participate. Knowing probably going to miss the beginning of the year, but trying to make a push into probably the middle of the season, and as they get closer to the playoffs and regions starting to make a chance to defend the title. So he's going through rehab, checking all the benchmarks of range of motion, swelling is down. He's getting close to that discharge point or the time when they start running, and because time had passed, they're like, "You're good to run," but didn't really take into account all the other things that you need to start looking at when you're talking about returning to run. Is the knee quiet? Do you have your full range of motion back? Are you able to tolerate pre-plyometric activities? Have you been exposed to pre-plyometric activities? How is your strength looking? Do you feel confident in yourself? There are a lot of things that go into running for the first time before running actually needs to happen. There's a lot of competencies that need to be checked off in terms of ability to handle load, absorb load, introduction to plyometrics. There's a lot of things that need to be checked off. And I think of running as a single leg bound repeatedly over and over again. And when we get into sprinting, it's a more aggressive bound. And so they kind of just told him because he had met the benchmarks, he was good. He was good to go with running. He was good to go with jumping because he could pass the triple hop test and the crossover hop. He was good. He was cleared to go back. And in his mind, he was like, I don't feel like I'm ready though. But you're telling me I'm good. It's my senior year. I'm trying to play, so I'm going to take it. And the doctor okayed it, and they told him he was good to go participate again. But in his mind, he knew he wasn't right. He knew something was off. And unfortunately, he came back and the same thing happened again. He tore it the same ACL again. And he was devastated because this was his senior year. He was trying to get back. He was trying to help his team. They ended up winning the chip, but he thought he would be a contributor to that because he worked so hard to get back to this point and he was following everything that he was supposed to do. And he just didn't have the full spectrum of things that he needed. So, what I want you guys to understand before we go on with the rest of the story and how this is going to play out is that medical clearance just means that your tissues have healed. It doesn't mean they've met the physiological readiness or you've met the psychological readiness to participate in sport. It just means your tissues have healed. It just means that enough time has passed for for your healing period to occur. So think typically ligaments take 9 to 12 months if it's a reconstruction or it's a surgery. Muscles take 8 to 12 depending on the severity. 8 to 12 weeks depending on the severity. Tendons are going to take a little longer, closer to that 8 to 12. So depending on what is injured, it's depending on the time frame. So a lot of medical providers use those as basic guides to help their return to sport decision making, and then they'll go off the return to play testing that is done, whether it's the hop testing, lateral step downs, if it's a lower body, upper body shot put tests. There's a lot of different tests that people use to closed chain power, closed chain stability, upper extremity power, lower body stability, and lower body power with a hop test. And they use all that to determine whether an athlete is ready to go. And I'm here to say that is not enough to get you cleared to return to sport. It's a good check mark to hit. Like, yeah, we hit one milestone, but just because you get that medical clearance does not mean that you're ready to return to sport. Now we have to start training and exposing you to change your direction. Max ever jumps, sub-max jumps, and getting really confident and building stiffness again. Being able to accelerate fast, being able to slow down fast, being able to change direction on a whim, being able to react without thinking, being able to feel really confident going whatever direction you need to, handling contact, no contact, under fatigue, not fatigued, being able to make good decisions, feel confident at all aspects of the rehab. Now that's the part you're supposed to go. After you get medical clearance, that's what we got to make sure we hit every single one of those. Because if we skip those parts and we don't get to that point, or we just go from I'm cleared and I try to go back to a game, your body hasn't touched those kind of speeds. Your body hasn't been conditioned to that level, most likely. And you're in for a rude awakening if you return back. And now think about it. Your reservoir, let's say if you're filling up a gas tank, your gas tank is probably half of what it used to be before the injury, and now you're asking it, and because that gas tank is half, the tank has now shrunk because it takes less to fill up the tank because you haven't been doing as much. You haven't been exposed to that. So we need to get a bigger tank so we can fill up with more gas. But we also need to get a more powerful engine to be able to do faster things and be able to handle more without the car breaking down. So we got to build the capacity up and we got to do it in a safe way, one, but also we have to make sure that you are exposed to really high and really heavy demands so that when you're in the game, you've already exceeded what you're going to see in the game and you feel confident going into that. So I say all that to say, back to my story, he came back, tore it again, and was scared to get surgery. Why? Because he already gone through it and he thought if he went through the rehab process again, they were just going to put him through the same process and the same thing was going to happen. And he was like, why would I do that? That doesn't make any sense. So where I come in is he tells me he's still trying to play basketball, but his knee sometimes doesn't feel all the way right. And I'm like, yo, doc, we gotta take care of that, especially if you're trying to continue to play. Like even if it's just recreationally or with your boys, like you still gotta make sure that your knee is right and it's stable. We can't have this instability that you're feeling. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make you a program. It's gonna be very detailed. I need you to interact with it and you tell me what feels easy, what feels hard, where you're feeling it. I'm gonna lay all these things out of where you should be feeling muscles working. We gotta get your quad stronger, number one. We gotta get your posterior chain, your glute, hamstring strong. Those are stabilizers for the knee. We gotta get your calf strong and attaches to the knee. And we gotta find you a surgeon that knows what they are doing and knows that what is required to return to high level sport. So we found him a surgeon, number one, in the city that had worked with Olympic athletes and was pretty had a pretty good reputation. Um, and so he set a surgery date, and he was just going to work on his rehab. And I would check in on him, make sure he's doing things feel good, make sure he's doing things appropriately. And he's like, yeah, this is way different than what I was doing in rehab the first time. And also, I feel really good going into my surgery. Like, I feel a lot more confident. And he already had the experience of going through it. So he felt a lot better, went through surgery. And he's like, yeah, it's not as nowhere near as bad as last time. My quad came back faster, my range of motion came back faster. I feel my flexion is coming back faster. My knee is not as swollen, and it's because of the work that he put in beforehand. ACL surgery, prehab, game changer. It's really important to get the quad as strong as possible before surgery. Make sure the swelling is down. Make sure all your range of motion is there because after the fact, after surgery, it's going to make it so much easier in the early process. So I'm a big proponent of prehab before surgery. You don't feel like you have to rush into surgery, especially if your knee is really swollen or your range of motion is not all the way back. It's going to make it harder for you when after surgery. So he did really good. And his surgery was last October. And now he's coming up on 9 months and he's doing really well. But we also made sure that he had, when it came back for like testing, that he had access to a good battery of things that they need to make sure they find a way to objectively measure his strength and not just have him push into his hand and go do just hop testing. We have to make sure we prepare him for actual demands of sports. So that was a story that I feel like was relevant to a lot of athletes. And I keep seeing my doctor told me I'm clear, but I still don't feel ready. And that is a normal thing. That shouldn't be the end line. That's just the beginning, honestly, because there's a whole another level we have to hit to. So just to recap, medical clearance does not mean you are ready to go back. It just means your tissue's healed, your basic function is restored. That's it. It's the first step of the finish line. It's not the end goal. Clearance does not mean what clearance doesn't mean is you've gotten exposure to game demands. You've been fatigued. You can make decisions when you're tired. You haven't built up you've built up a lot of decisions in unpredictable moments and fatigue and chaos, reactivity. None of that is at your clearance appointment. And we have to expose you to that. That's goal number one. That has to be high on the agenda. And then you have to be physically ready. You have to be mentally ready, physically ready. If you don't feel like you're right, you shouldn't go back to the game. Plain and simple. You should not go back. If you do not feel mentally 100%, 110%, you should not go back. Take the extra time to expose yourself to more training, to expose yourself to more demands, to more decision makings under real conditions, under challenging situations, having you make reactive decisions that you don't know the answer to, you just have to figure out solutions to. And that's where it gets fun, but that's also how you know you are ready. The training has to be harder than the actual game, because if that's the case, you know you're good because you've already seen the worst of the worst, so to say, or how hard it can get. The game's going to be a lot easier. And so we also just got to make sure your strength is appropriate, your max output and relative to your body weight is where it needs to be. Mentally, you feel good, and a lot of the times movement and a lot of the times under fatigue, can you move well and can you make good decisions? If those three are hit, you're trending in the right direction. But a lot of times people just hit the medical clearance and that's it. And number four, I just want you guys to understand feeling off is completely normal. If you haven't done something for at a certain particular speed for a long time and you suddenly get thrust into it, it's going to feel weird. And that is okay. That is okay. It's going to take time. This is something that you got to put time into and you got to have the right team around you to make sure that you are getting challenged enough safely. Safety number one is challenging enough and safe enough to make sure that they understand what you need to get back to the game of basketball. And if you don't have those things, it's okay to try and go find it and go find second opinion, get second opinions. Because if there's an inkling of doubt at all, make sure that you are challenged enough. Make sure you feel 100% confident. Because if you don't, it's just harder to beat that mental barrier because you know you just haven't been prepared enough for it yet. It's just a matter of preparedness, and there are steps to slowly get you there from A to Z. And so that's really it. So that's what I want you guys to think about. That's what I felt compelled to share with you guys. If you guys have been following my socials, I've been big on this. Medical clearance does not mean you are ready to return to sport. I've just been seeing it too many times, and it's something that I feel like I have to voice as a healthcare provider and as someone who loves the game and wants people to be able to enjoy the game. It's just something that I think we need to be better at. And so I really hope this resonates with y'all, and I hope that you guys can have more information when you guys go back to your doctor's appointments and understand questions that you guys can ask to really make sure that you guys are ready and mentally you are ready. That's really the biggest barrier. So if this episode hit home with y'all, follow me on Instagram at DocMang. I'll put out content specifically for basketball players navigating the return. Real information, no fluff, built around what I see in the clinic and the court every single week. And when you follow me in my bio, there's a link. You guys can get your return ready checklist and I'll put that in the show notes too. But it's 5 questions that tells you exactly where your body's at right now, so you stop guessing and start moving forward with a plan. And on that note, I'm gonna see y'all on the next episode. Peace.